You're listening to Faces of Our Cities. I'm your host, Jesse. Today, I am with someone who honestly has had an impact on my life for many years, whether he realizes it or not. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's a coach, he's an entrepreneur. He would blow your mind. He blew my mind within 10 minutes of getting to meet him. And every time I have a conversation with him, it just changes the trajectory of my day. His name is Gerald Duran. And Gerald and I don't even know how to really explain our very first encounter, but from what I remember, it was about 8 or so years ago. I was working as a freelance video producer, and I was just reaching out to anyone that seemed like they could eventually be a client. And I found Gerald on LinkedIn, requested that he become a connection, and he agreed. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I have no idea who this guy is. Can't believe he totally just did that. And I can't remember exactly how it transpired after that. It wouldn't be surprising if Gerald was the one to first say, do you want to meet? But it's possible that I did as well. But what was really unique was that we got together and we met. But our first meeting started with actually Gerald, if I remember right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Gerald, but
Okay.
I think we went and got coffee. And then as we were talking, you were like, do you have some extra time? Come with me. And I remember getting in your car and you taking me to a building. Uh, this sounds like the beginning of like a terrible, terrible horror movie, but
Yeah.
you showed me this building that you were looking at, and I think you were talking with the owner of the building about starting an incubator there for people literally just like me. It was out, and as you were talking about it, your excitement was just so contagious that I was like, "Oh man, I don't want to ever not be connected to this guy." So, does that sound right to you?
I think so. If I know you're my friend, I sit back and I go, okay, when did we meet? I know we've had a lunch or a dinner at this wonderful Mexican place. But then, as I remember back, we met for coffee or something, and I had a meeting or something, and I just said, I didn't want the conversation to end. I said, just come with me. And we were scouting Milwaukee for buildings to buy for our incubator. And I can't remember, if it was 2016 or 2017 when we met.
Yeah.
Jesse, I'm 60 years old. I don't remember things that far back anymore.
Those little details don't matter. No, it's so true. And but it was just something about that I was like, I don't really meet too many people like this that, like, first of all, like, I connected with really quickly, and then they were like, I'm going to show you something I'm working on. And most people are like, cool, that was a great coffee, we'll see you later, talking a year maybe, right? And it's yeah. And then honestly, like, what transpired after that was you had started, if I remember right, meeting in the Hudson Lounge, which
Right,
was
right,
kind
right.
of a co-working space coffee shop in downtown Milwaukee, or
Third
uh,
word, yeah.
third ward Milwaukee. And I came to a couple of those. You gave me one of your books, and I started working through one of your books. I think, if I remember right, it was His Plan, My Plan.
Right,
That
yeah.
was one of the first ones. Really awesome, just like
Thank you.
short vision plan. Like, and like like I say interactive, right? Because I remember writing in it, and I think, if I remember right, you had space for me to actually like use it as a workbook. There was plenty of meat in it, but it was also like a book workbook type of experience.
Jesse, do you know how it ended up being a workbook? This is embarrassing, but I'll tell you. So, the first, you know, uh, that was the first book that I wrote, and I'm dealing with I hired like an editor, and all this to help me. I never written one, and so I put all this work to it. The first time I turned it in, they're like, "You're like 100 pages too short." So I was like, "Oh my God, how am I gonna?" So I went back to work, all this stuff, and then I ended up being like 8 pages too short. So I'm thinking, remember, I'm an innovator. So I thought, I don't have anything more to say in this book. I'm sick of writing this book. I'm going to create these pages where people could take notes, and that's what those were.
That's so funny. Which is even more humorous because, like when you look at it, it's not a long book by any means. Like
No.
no one should hear like he wrote an extra 100 pages and be like, oh, I don't have time for that. Not not for like a help book or anything like that. But no, I mean it's a very readable book. It's very easy to get through. It's a very easy like pick it up, put it back down, come back to it a week later after I've like meditated and brewed and gnawed on a chapter, right? So
Uh,
it's a great I loved it. It was, and it really helped me at a time in my life where personally there was just a lot of confusion for me.
mhm.
Um I'm sure we'll get into this, what you're up to now, but and we can. Oh, I mean, you run essentially a faith-based um, organization. I'm not sure if it's
Yeah,
nonprofit or not.
we started out a nonprofit, and today we're a for-profit. We never took donations to start with, and so we're actually transitioning into a public benefit company, and that's something in between, like a for-profit and a nonprofit. And it just means that we could use our profits and dump it back into society without any shareholders saying, "Hey, all this profit needs to go in our pocket." So it's kind of this
Yeah.
new type of organization that's out there that's become really popular.
Yeah, we've seen like Tom's, I think, isn't like Tom's Shoes like
There's a
an
lot of them
organization like
heading
that?
that way,
Yeah.
and they want the ability to give back without like a board of directors saying, "Hey, all that profit needs to go to the shareholders." And then without the oversight of being a not-for-profit, and so
And that stigma that kind of comes with that, right?
I
Like
think
it's
so.
one of
We tried to figure out what are we from a legal standpoint, and we were an odd not-for-profit that didn't want anybody's money in terms of donations. You
yeah.
know, although if you want to send me a donation, go ahead.
Yeah.
I've gotten
You can
past
do
that
that.
now.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, we totally skipped over the name of the what you're building. It's
it's Cana Global.
okay.
And, I got the name Cana from that story, the biblical story of when Jesus turned like the water to wine. And, we deal with a lot of people that are kind of stuck between life seasons and seeking purpose. We work with a lot of startup founders that are trying to figure things out. And so when I look at like somebody in the marketplace that's, going into this new season in life, it's like a miracle that happens in their life. And so, plus I like wine. So there you go.
It just checks all the boxes for you. Yeah. No, and it's short and catchy, right? So I mean, it checks all the boxes there. So break it down for me. I mean, Cana Global is essentially an incubator, a faith-based incubator. Am I right in thinking that? Or
Yeah, I
I
mean
know
that's
there's more
part of
to it
what
than
we
that.
do. We've really grown. When we first started out, what we wanted to do, we were kind of an event-driven company in Milwaukee, and so there was a friend of mine owned the Hudson Grill, and at night it's a co-working space and a bar, as you know, and kind of a restaurant. And at night they weren't doing anything, and we were out searching for buildings, and just every building we were trying to get our hands on, everything kept on falling through. So we ended up there. We started doing like meetups 4 or 5 nights a week, just really on topics that we know people in the workplace, career problems, business problems, all that kind of stuff. And so we started out an event company, really building a community around that, and that was our beginnings in Milwaukee. And then we had an opportunity later on. I had spoke at a conference in Chicago. Some guy heard me speaking and said, "Hey, I've got all this land and these buildings in Los Angeles." And so that was our second campus. And that was our campus, and it was 88,000 square feet of indoor outdoor space. So it was a huge place. And we had studios, and we did just really events. We were doing events 4 or 5 nights a week. So we've really become like a community. In 2020, when we really started streaming a lot of what we were doing, we started reaching a global audience. And so the trouble with the global audience is they could they didn't live anywhere near us, so they would miss out on a lot. And so in 2019, I really got the idea of taking everything we're doing and going completely online with it and figuring out like how that would work. And so, and we had no idea COVID was coming. And so by the time COVID came along, it actually helped us instead of hurt us. But so today, I would tell you that about 80% of our audience is from outside the United States. I don't know how these people hear about us, but in the different events, we have people from really all over the world. There's two things that we're focused on. And one is purpose, is people really understanding like their marketplace calling, like the thing that's in their heart that they feel like they were created to do. And then the second thing is launching and growing companies. There's a statistic that has driven this, and it's 70% of the global workforce have a desire to find purpose in their life. So that's a large amount of people. And the same percentage of people would like to become self-employed. And so when we set out, we thought, you know what, let's just dedicate a lot of what we do around those two things. Let's provide solutions, and let's attract people that are trying to figure out purpose. And if they want to start a business, or if they have a existing business with flat or declining revenue, let's help them fix that. So that's the bulk of our focus. And we're faith-based because we're connecting these dots between business, purpose, success, and faith. And a lot of times they're disconnected. But for me as a serial entrepreneur, they've never been more connected. So we share that story.
I mean, I love that. It's one of the things that I loved about what you were working on, that I was getting to meet a lot of people like me that either were, I mean, I was in the middle of trying to understand my purpose, but also had a desire to be successful as a solopreneur, right? Um, but oftentimes felt somewhat, and I don't know if I maybe created this myself, but felt like I was on an island all by myself, right? And then
Yeah.
getting to just have a taste of that community at Cana MKE, I started realizing, wow, look at all these other people that are like me, that are, trying to make it work. And they're also, believers, right? Or working through that. Some of them obviously weren't.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of really great energy in that environment. And it was really just a great place to be nurtured, both in my faith and my understanding of purpose and how to build something sustainable, right?
Right.
Now I'm really curious because I know your background, and we haven't touched this on this, but hearing all those things, that's really great. What I guess what set you up for this success, or all right, maybe not, that's not the right way to say that. What set you up to know how to do this? You've talked about, mentioned being an entrepreneur, but I know there's a long history there. Would you be willing to kind of
Sure.
give us the short version? Because I bet we could talk for hours on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in, my 37th year as a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company, a staffing company in Newport Beach, California, at 23 years old. So totally young, totally dumb. And really, I only had 6 months experience before that at a staffing company, and they fired me for partying too much. So, I wasn't, and, I came from a pretty dysfunctional family. We were like lower middle class. I'm Hispanic, so we're in this Mexican community. The aspirations we had growing up was maybe if I'm lucky, I would be a factory supervisor someplace. So that was this environment that I grew up in. I wasn't part of this. I didn't come from the right family. I didn't go to the right school. There's a certain percentage of society that are just groomed to be really, really successful. I didn't come from that, but I had these dreams inside me. And so during actually a down period in my life when everything went to crap, I read a book that changed my life. It was called Tough Times Never Last, but Tough People Do. And I started planning. I had no money, and I started planning building this company. And guess what? The dream of it and the planning overtook me. And 1 year later, I'm sitting in my offices in Newport Beach, starting a staffing company. That was the
There's a
genesis.
great, I was gonna say there's a great picture of you, I think, in that office on your website. It's worth it for people to go check it out. It's great.
I was so stupid that I was very insecure. I have no real experience, and so I rented this really fancy office. And my desk. Now, this is 37 years ago. I spent $6,000 on a desk. I walked into a furniture store and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to have that desk." Well, I so that was in the picture that you saw. But Jesse, for 1 year, I made no money. 1 year. And so to pay my bills and to eat, I drove a diesel truck at nighttime. And, I grew up, kind of in a Christian home and, Christian. And my mom, remember Saturday Night Live, the church lady?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
That's my mom. That's my mom.
yeah.
And my dad was kind of like the working alcoholic. That's what I came out of. But that was I learned something in that year. I believed in God. I wouldn't say I was a follower of God, but I believed in God. And when they always say there's no atheist in the foxhole. So after 1 year of just failing miserably, I was doing what everybody else was doing. And I remember one day just like going, okay, God, you have to know what I'm doing wrong. You have to know. And I don't understand if you know why you wouldn't tell me. And so that was like, I would be almost embarrassed to hear it today. My prayer was really irreverent, because I'm just this young guy that's like so frustrated with life and everything, trying to figure out I made this huge mistake. And, I wonder what I could sell my $6,000 desk for, when I shut this place down. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3 weeks later, all these new ideas started coming into my head. It took me a month to execute them. And the next thing you know, I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life, which wasn't saying much at that point. But you know what happened? We started opening up offices all over Southern California. And that was really when I decided, you know what? I like this idea of like having like God, like my business partner. What is he, my silent partner? I don't know. But after that, I let him drive. I let him do the driving. And I've been doing it ever since that way.
It's I love stories about people that pray really bold prayers. And that's what it sounds like. I feel like I can relate. There have been, I think, I've been in places at on my knees, just n- at a complete loss of
Oh
where
yeah.
my life was going or what I was supposed to be doing, to the point where I can count a couple of times where I was just angry and screaming at God.
Oh
Like
yeah.
literally, I was out in the middle of nowhere and I was like, "What in the world are you doing? Like, give me a freaking break." And I mean, I've sworn at God and I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Wow, I'm mad. I'm ready. Let's do this. What is up?" And it's a not that I not that I encourage doing that, but eh, in the middle of that is this bold prayer that comes out to let him be in charge and to say like, fine, if like I thought you were telling me this, but if that's not what's up, then like it's time for you to show up.
Right, right, right,
So
right.
like anytime now, like if your Uber's late, I get it, but let's go, you know. And it's amazing because he always does, you know.
He
And
always does. And you know what I found? I mean, I've met with over the years thousands and thousands of people like you that somehow reached out and we had a coffee or we met or something. What I found is that it doesn't matter if they're a believer or not. When trouble hits, even the atheists pray. When there's no atheists in the foxhole. And the thing is that sometimes I think God allows us to become uncomfortable so that we seek out the comforter. And, I would tell you that probably 99% of the people that come to CanaGlobal are in this stuck season. They're in between life seasons. They're in some kind of transition period. So they're coming to us because everything's not working out well. And usually we're like their last resort. They've tried everything on their own, and then they've said, you know what, I was just on LinkedIn, or I was on Facebook, or on one of the social media platforms, and I saw this event, or I saw something, and I usually don't respond to those things, but just something kind of drew me in, and that's what did it. And I think there are these like God moments where, like, he's just waiting for people, because what I have found, I mean, now that I've developed a relationship, he wants to help. He's just not. He doesn't force his help on anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're very on point with that.
So that was the beginning of, I've really had like 3 seasons in my life. I spent my first 16 years. I grew 4 companies. I launched them, grew them, exited them, and then I transitioned to a season where I spent another 16 years turning around problem companies. And so I launched a turnaround consultancy, and we turned around problem companies, and we were we turned around a lot of for-profit colleges and then tech companies. And then since 2016, I'm in this third season, where we're really helping the global workforce and small business entrepreneurs find purpose and launch and grow companies. And so that's the 37 years kind of put together.
Wow. Wow. I mean, thank you so much for your time, for giving me it, because you're so
Oh yeah,
busy. So thank you so much. Um, so a big part of this podcast is giving our listeners a couple of nuggets that they can take back and um, just put into application in their life. Coming from someone with as much experience and having had many highs and lows, um, I can imagine you have more than two or three to give us. But are you willing to share kind of
yeah.
like two or three like life hacks? I would love. I know you have a really great one about like kind of like planning your vision and future. So I hope that that's on your
Yeah.
list. If it's not, then like maybe we can add it
Well,
on.
no,
But
it is. I'm actually in it right now because every November and December I do this for myself. But what I would tell people is, first, take some time. End of the year is the perfect time to do this, but you could do this anytime, and decide what you want out of life. So what I do is I take time and I paint a portrait of what I want my life to look like, from my personal life first, and then my business life. I always start with my personal life. And I ask myself 2 questions. If I had a magic wand, what would I change in my life over the next 5 years? Or sometimes I ask it this way. I say, if I knew I couldn't fail and I had all of the resources, what would I attempt to accomplish? And then I start seeing it, and I paint so for me, it would be like, I can remember one season where I was thinking, I would really love to live like in a cottage. I was past the McMansion and all that. I'd like to be on the coast someplace. I see myself cooking for family and have friends over, and I like the beach, and I like the idea of, walking out in the sand and being inspired to write and something like that. And so I'm not worried about how I'm going to accomplish it. At that point, I'm just deciding what I want. And then I'm counting the cost of time, energy, and focus. So once you see it, write it down. And the second thing is count the cost. Understand the cost of having your dream. And then when you look at your career or your business, understand what it is that you have to do. So it's no different than planning a vacation, understanding the cost. Here's where I want to go. Here's the cost of it, and then start saving money for it. That would be like the first thing. I've been doing this for 30 years, 30 years of my marriage. The second thing I would say is, I'm going to speak to entrepreneurs. Understand the top reasons why companies fail. This part breaks my heart, Jesse, because there's so many people, especially now in the gig economy, where people are freelancing and doing all kinds of different things. But 50% of businesses fail in their first year, and 90% fail over 5 years. And it's like a pain, it's like a slow, painful death where they're getting in debt. And so they're on this entrepreneurial mountain climb. And when I look at the reasons why they fail, it's so preventable. So the first thing is they don't have product market fit. And so usually they don't have product market fit. And that just means the market doesn't want what they're selling the way they're selling it. They don't have a good way to like vet their business model and brand. And they don't understand customer acquisition, like what it takes to produce revenue. If people would focus on that, if you're starting or growing a company, then and you're producing revenue, once you're producing revenue, you could work the mistakes out of your business. And the third thing is just mentor up. I mean, the reason why I'm generous with my time is because other people have been generous with their time. That's it. So it's like I've always found people that kind of look like I want to become, or they've made the journey, they've climbed the mountain that I want to climb, and so you'll be surprised at how many people are glad to share their stories. And I want to find out like what mistakes, where did you get scraped up, where did you fall? So I don't want to have to make that same mistake. So those would be the three things: know where you want to go, really have a way to vet what you're doing, and you do that through mentorship. Find somebody. I mean, I have people reach out to me really every single day from LinkedIn that are like, hey, can we do a Zoom call, do a coffee? And as long as I know they're not going to like try to sell me something, I always say yes. I always say yes. And and if I could, I would spend all my time doing that because I really love it.
I maybe that's part of the reason I keep reaching out to you, right? If you didn't realize it yet, you're definitely one of those people that I aspire to be like. Maybe not all of the experiences, but definitely a lot of the experiences. And I similarly really just enjoy being able to have these conversations with people, and
Me too.
hopefully one day can be at that point where I can offer just as much really valuable insight as you do. So thank you so much
My pleasure.
for those nuggets. Um, I've heard you say some of those before, but that nugget about why companies fail, I think that's really interesting, and people don't like to share that, and that's a big part of this Faces of Our Cities podcast is, hey, help us, help the others, whether you're in the same industry or not. Tell us what the pitfall was that you didn't realize was going to be a pitfall, right?
Right.
Or yeah, where did you scrape your knee that you're like, ugh, like I should let people know about that bump in the
Absolutely.
road, because if the more of us that don't have to go over that bump, the further we'll be able to move forward. So, Gerald, thank you for your time. I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with you again soon,
Yes.
and I think maybe just you and I sooner than later, but maybe on this podcast, maybe again in 6 months, would be really great to hear how things keep on moving as our world keeps on changing. For our listeners, LinkedIn seems to be probably the best way to
Yeah.
follow you,
LinkedIn,
right,
reach
and
out
reach
to me
out.
on LinkedIn, and I promise I'll get back to you, especially if you're a video producer.
Yeah, all right, cool, awesome. Yeah, just don't try to sell them anything, at least not right away. And canaglobal.org, I
Org.
think,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. CanaGlobal.org.
Canaglobal.org. Yeah, check it out. There's just so many things that you guys have going on, and they're all just really jiving together really well. I really enjoyed going on your site and just seeing how you guys are moving and grooving. So
Cool.
thank you so much. Have a really
All
great
right.
day.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.